Look at Los Angeles right now, and it feels like pure human will. You see freeways stacked like spaghetti. You see warehouses spread out for miles. Downtown towers sit on flat ground and look permanent. People talk like the city was built by effort alone. They think it is all choices and money. Then the ground shakes, and the whole story changes in 10 seconds. Here is the strange part. A lot of the most serious danger is not on a big, obvious crack you can point to. You can't walk up to a line in the dirt and see it. A lot of the danger is deep under the city. It is hidden. For decades, people lived here and just wondered when the big one would hit. They looked at the mountains and the flat land and felt like they were missing a piece of the puzzle. Now we know exactly why it's this way. The mystery is over. Los Angeles sits where 3 major hidden cracks meet beneath the ground. These are not just any cracks. Scientists call them blind thrust faults. That sounds like a fancy term from a textbook, but it is actually very simple to understand. Think of a rug on your living room floor. If you push the rug from one side, the rug bunches up. You see a wrinkle in the middle of the floor, but you might not see the exact spot your hand is pushing under the edge. That is the idea here. The push is real. The strain builds up deep down. But the break does not always show a clean line at the surface. You just see the bunching up. That bunching up is what created the hills and the valleys you drive through every day. The land rose up because it was being squeezed. These 3 hidden cracks meet under the city floor like 3 heavy springs. Each spring holds energy. Each one is waiting to snap. This meeting point matters because it creates a high hazard zone. When several loaded systems sit close together, you do not have one simple problem. You have a cluster. It is like having 3 separate engines all running at once. If one gets hot, the others feel the heat. This is the first big reveal. The city isn't just near a crack. It is sitting on top of a whole network of them. These cracks have been moving for millions of years. That is much longer than any building has been standing. It is even longer than humans have been in the region. Drive through the city today and you see the results of this. You see the hills in Northridge or the slopes of the San Gabriel Mountains. Those mountains stand thousands of feet high. That is like stacking 40 houses on top of each other. They didn't get that way by accident. They got that way because the earth was pushing up. Every time the ground shakes, those mountains get a tiny bit taller. It happens too slow to see with your eyes. But the rock doesn't lie. The rock shows that this has happened thousands of times. Scientists used to think the danger was mostly on the big famous cracks like the San Andreas. They thought as long as you stayed away from that line, you were safe. But they were wrong. The hidden cracks under the city are actually more dangerous for the people living right on top of them. Now we have the second big reveal. These hidden cracks move differently. A normal crack might slide sideways, but these thrust cracks push upward. They can lift the entire floor of the city in an instant. Imagine a giant hand under the city just shoving upward. That is what happened in the 1994 Northridge quake. It wasn't on a crack anyone knew about. It was hidden. It caught everyone by surprise. But now, surprise is gone. We have mapped every inch of these hidden lines. We have used lasers and satellites to see how the ground is moving. The data is clear. The ground is moving about ½ an inch every year. That doesn't sound like much. It's slower than your fingernails grow. But over 100 years, that is 4 feet of movement. That energy has to go somewhere. People used to feel guilty for living in these spots. They felt like they were taking a gamble. But geology shows us that the whole region was built this way. You cannot have the flat land where the houses are without the hidden cracks that made the land. The very thing that makes the city a good place to build, the flat basin, is a result of the mountains being pushed up around it. It is all one system. Geography determined where the city would go. It determined where the water would flow and where the soil would be deep enough to build. This isn't a human mistake. It is just the way the machinery of the earth works in this part of the world. For a long time, the research was slow. Geologists had to work with what they could see on the surface. They looked at old riverbeds. They looked at where the hills were highest. But the breakthrough came when they started drilling deep. They took core samples from miles underground. This is like taking a vertical slice of a layer cake to see what's inside. They found layers of rock that had been folded and twisted. It looked like someone had taken a piece of paper and crumpled it up in their hand. That folding only happens when the land is under massive pressure. They used radioactive dating to see how old the rocks were. This is like a geological clock. It measures how certain elements break down over time. It told them exactly when each fold happened. They found that the Puente Hills crack alone has broken at least 4 times in the last 11,000 years. That is back when woolly mammoths were still around. It happened before the pyramids were built. It happened before any modern history began. This gave them a timeline. It wasn't a guess anymore. It was a recorded history written in the dirt. They could see that the ground breaks on a regular cycle. This was the third reveal. The danger isn't random. It follows a pattern. The land stores up energy for a long time, then it lets it go all at once. It is like a rubber band being stretched. You can pull and nothing happens. But eventually, the rubber band has to snap. Then they discovered something even more important. They used computer models to see what happens when all 3 cracks work together. They found that if one breaks, it puts more pressure on the other 2. They are linked like chains in a fence. If you pull on one link, the whole fence moves. This explained why certain areas of the city feel more shaking than others. It depends on which crack is doing the most work at that moment. Universities like Caltech and teams from the government spent years testing this. They used sensors that can detect a vibration smaller than a human hair. They proved that the energy is building up right now. It is not a theory, it is a measurement. But then came the drought in the discovery. For a few years, it seemed like they had reached a limit. They knew the cracks were there. They knew they were moving. But they couldn't figure out which one was the biggest threat. Some said the Sierra Madre was the leader. Others thought the Compton crack was the one to watch. There was a lot of debate. People started to wonder if we would ever really know. It felt like we were waiting for a mystery that might never be solved. This created anxiety. People want to know what to expect. They don't want maybe. They want to know exactly what the ground under their feet is doing. The breakthrough finally came from mapping the floor of the ocean just off the coast. They found that the cracks didn't stop at the beach. They kept going out under the water. This was the smoking gun moment. By looking at the seafloor, they could see the cracks more clearly because there were no buildings or roads in the way. They saw huge walls of rock that had been pushed up under the waves. These walls matched perfectly with the lines they saw under the city. It was like finding the missing piece of a map. They could finally see the whole picture. The cracks under Los Angeles are part of a massive system that runs for hundreds of miles. This leads us to the final cluster of reveals. First, they found that these hidden cracks can produce quakes much larger than people thought. We are talking about a magnitude 7.5. That is a massive amount of energy. It is enough to move the ground several feet in a second. Second, they found that the soil in the basin makes the shaking worse. Because the basin is filled with soft dirt and sand, the shaking gets trapped. It bounces around like sound in a room. This is why the flat parts of the city can feel more shaking than the hard rock mountains. Third, they confirmed that the Puente Hills crack is directly under downtown. It is like a giant spring sitting right under the tallest buildings. Fourth, they proved that the Sierra Madre crack is what created the San Gabriel Mountains. Those peaks go up to 10,000 feet. That is nearly 2 miles high. That represents millions of years of hidden cracks pushing up. Fifth, they discovered that the Compton crack is moving in a way that could affect the ports. This is where most of the country's goods come in. If the ground there moves, it affects the whole nation's economy. Sixth, they used GPS to show that the city is actually getting narrower. The space between the mountains and the sea is shrinking by a tiny bit every year. The land is being squeezed together. Seventh, they matched the rocks from the deep drill sites with the rocks on the surface of the hills. They are identical. Same minerals, same age. This proves beyond any doubt that the hills were pushed up from deep underground. Eighth, they found that the system is stable in its movement. It has been doing this same thing for 5 million years. It is a permanent part of the geography. It is not going to stop or change. This is the ground truth. Ninth, and most importantly, they realized that the order of which crack breaks first doesn't matter as much as the fact that they are all part of one machine. The mystery of the first one is solved by seeing that they are all connected. This brings us to a sense of closure. For a long time, living in Los Angeles felt like a personal choice that came with a hidden price. But the geology shows it is not about choice. It is about the physical reality of the land. This land was built to move. It was built by these hidden forces. Every hill, every valley, and every flat space was created by these cracks. This is not a failure of the people. It is the natural state of the region. Understanding this removes the blame. You are not at fault for living there. You are living on one of the most active and powerful geological systems on the planet. The evidence has settled the debate. We know why the hills are where they are. We know why the ground shakes. We know how much energy is stored down there. Science has mapped the machinery. The questions that used to haunt people are now answered with hard data and core samples. We don't have to guess anymore. We can see the springs under the floor. We know they are loaded. This allows people to prepare without the fear of the unknown. You can anchor your furniture. You can store your water. You can have a plan. Preparation is just basic shop sense. You don't wait for a belt to snap before you keep a spare. You do not wait for a storm to hit before you check the generator. The geographic patterns we see today were determined by these ancient forces. Geography is permanent on human timescales. These geological forces were active hundreds of millions of years ago and remain active today. Industries change and populations shift, but the underlying landscape stays constant. This is not about human decisions. It is about physics written in stone. The mystery is solved. Core samples and satellite measurements confirmed this network of hidden cracks created the boundary that still controls how the land is shaped and where the city exists today. Next time the ground moves, you aren't witnessing a random event. You are seeing the Earth's machinery doing what it has always done. The same processes that built the mountains are still working today, just too slowly to notice most of the time. The case is closed. Understanding these permanent geological forces explains why this region looks the way it does. The geographic features are not random. They are the result of ancient processes that science has now fully documented.